Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities such as new companies and potential business partners and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest and start investing and networking on public.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Grid Live Encore. I'm Ben Schneider, and with us once again after a week off is Brandon Crossland. Brandon, I have just one question for you. How the Fox are you doing tonight?
Well, I was not ready for that, but I'm doing pretty well, Ben. I guess you gave the spoiler alert of the bulk of what we'll be talking about this evening in this short episode of Grid Live Encore. But glad to see you again, and thank you, Kobe, for stepping in as always. And it's good to be back here on Monday night, back with you, Ben.
Yeah, I know you're gearing up for the race over in your neck of the woods in Nashville. I know it's going to be a hot weekend over there, so I don't know if you got plans to go to the track, but if you do, make sure you stay cool there.
Yeah, I went to the inaugural one last year. No plans this year, but I'll let everyone else bring all their water bottles in their Kroger bag, and it's because you can't bring coolers into the facility.
Yeah, no, that's certainly been a major talking point on social media and Twitter in particular, just as the Fox coverage was on Saturday night at Knoxville. I think that's what we have to start with. Maybe I should say the lack of coverage presented to us on the FS1 broadcast that came under a lot of criticism for missing several key moments of the race, most notably the flip by Jessica Friesen. You see Kyle Rivas of Getty Images was able to capture this photograph of Friesen flipping over when she hit the inside bank. Unfortunately, the Fox coverage did not only miss the original flip as it happened, only having the aftermath of Friesen's truck beached on the embankment there. They didn't have a single replay at all, and that was just one of many problems that people had with the coverage. Other issues included taking side-by-side commercials between race winner Todd Gilliland's final lap and the front stretch interview, as well as getting his name wrong on one of the graphics. Now, here's what NASCAR's Brock Beard had to say about the coverage on his post-race live stream.
What was that? What on earth, Fox? I probably should have called this "What the Fox." That was probably good. Actually, that should have been the subtitle of this, but I'm gonna have a feeling I'm probably gonna need that later on this year for something else that with the remaining truck series schedule.
Brandon, I know we've talked about the Fox coverage on this show in the past and all year. You think back to the Atlanta race with the whole Shake and Bake Girls controversy and just the constant shots of the fans and everything. And this isn't a new issue when it comes to FS1 and particularly the Truck Series broadcasts. But was Saturday night the worst that it's ever been? In your opinion?
Thank you for reminding me about Atlanta and all the other woes we've had so far this season. Yeah, it's been a struggle to be sure. And I think the worst part about it, Ben, is that it's probably made my enjoyment of the Truck Series less just because I know it's going to be on a Fox broadcast. And I hate that, but it's sad that this is the standard that we've just become so accustomed to that we don't really notice it's bad until it gets really bad. And Fox is and has made a mess really of the planning of their camera shots and execution of it, and getting key things that you think would be so simple to capture when you're on a half-mile track like Knoxville. There's not much room for error. There's not much room to miss. And we were talking before the show, either you're not having enough cameras at the facility to make these shots to get everything captured, or you're too zoomed in, which might be the case. I'm sure they got plenty of cameras, but they're too zoomed in to all the action, and I don't know how you can remedy this issue unless somebody who actually is in the Fox elite can say, "Hey, we have a problem." And I know you're about to have a huge rant here, and I can't wait to hear it.
Well, yes, I know Kobe thinks I'm going to go full Stephen A. Smith mode on this show. I think I'll do my best to keep my emotions in check and not go that far there. But, he's right here in the chat as well. The broadcast was rough. SRX also got off to a bit of a rough start with their coverage on Saturday night as well. And we'll get into SRX in a second as well here, because it's worth noting that Camping World sponsors both series, the SRX series and the Truck series. Marcus Lemonis, I think, had some he didn't say it himself, but I think his liked tweets maybe told the story there. Also, Adam Lemery's complimentary you on your hat there, Brandon.
48.
Yeah. Listen, everybody. There's I don't even know where to begin, because Brandon, what you brought up a good point about the zooming issue, and that's been an issue with Fox, in all three series that they broadcast for a long time now. You have a half-mile track here. I was reminded, getting ready for the show tonight, ESPN missed Elliott Sadler's record-breaking impact at Pocono in 2010. But at least they had one particular shot, because everybody was so focused on Kurt Busch, that you had, one angle that could show Sadler going into the initial impact. We can't tell what happened to him to get him there, but that's a 2.5-mile track, and you had a crash already in motion. So maybe you could say that, it's not necessarily excusable, but it's at least understandable why you might have missed that one. This is a half-mile track here. And in this day and age, to not have a camera pointed anywhere on the track, to be able to go back and show a replay of what happened, is simply inexcusable. And another point that I brought up on social media Saturday night is, it's 2022 now. This isn't like 50 years ago when it was so revolutionary for CBS to put a camera in Cale Yarborough's car and the technology was unbelievable. What's stopping us from having an onboard camera on every single truck? I mean, when you think about it, they can't be, that much of a hassle. We've had this technology for decades now. Formula One have a camera on every single one of their cars in that series. The IndyCar series, I think, at least half the field had in-car cameras on the NBC broadcast for Road America. So why in NASCAR are we still relegated to, only 6 or 9 or however many trucks it is, having an onboard shot? I think the advantages of the onboard, go beyond just showing what happens in the race. I think a lot of times maybe Fox is a little bit too obsessed with the onboard cameras or the in-car shots, when they're actually showing the action. But when you're going back to see a replay or going back to try to figure out what went down or what happened there, the onboards can tell a bit more of a story than you can just get from the outside shots. And in this particular instance, imagine if Jessica Friesen had an onboard roof camera on the top of her truck. That would definitely tell the full story there. Now, all credit in the world to the photographers, and Jordan Teagues, I know, had his 15 minutes of fame on Saturday night, because he actually was recording amateur video from the stands and ended up getting the back end of the footage of Friesen's flip there. But, we've got to, we talked about this as well before we came on the air, Brandon. How many people are honestly, if we're being honest here, interactive on NASCAR Twitter on any given race weekend?
We agreed about 5,000 or so.
5,000.
I think people that are actively tweeting and actively being involved, not just following a bunch of people.
And for a truck race, I think that's probably more on the generous side of things, right? You think about, and particularly for this truck race, you had the ARCA race at Berlin, which we'll get into later on in the show, and you also had SRX on primetime on CBS, which was their first race of the year. So I think, I haven't seen the ratings. I don't know if the ratings are out yet for the truck race, but I imagine it might have even been less than that. I think a good estimate for the truck series ratings on FS1 is usually somewhere in, the 450 to 700,000 range, depending on, the track and the time of day and the broadcast window and everything. So if we're using those, let's just say for the sake of argument here, it's 5,000 on Twitter versus 500,000 watching the broadcast. That means that 1% of the viewing audience is also actively scrolling through Twitter during the race. That means that 99% of the people watching the truck race on Saturday night had no idea that Jessica Friesen flipped, had no idea. Yeah. Sorry, what was that?
And still don't know.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. They had no idea she flipped and no idea that she got back in the race. I mean, that was the other thing. Brock was talking, in his post-race live stream, like he was expecting to have to write a Jessica Friesen article. But what a story it is that the truck went over and ended up getting back in the race and was out there logging laps at the end of the race so that she didn't end up being credited with a last place finish. They had no idea that any of this had happened. They just saw a truck beached on the banking there on the inside of a track and had no idea how it got there. And it's inexcusable enough that they missed the flip actually happening. It's even more inexcusable that nobody in the director's box went to the booth and said, like, hey, we have to mention that. I mean, because I assume these people, are being told that, or at least are seeing, the NASCAR on Fox Twitter account, is seeing what's going on social media and everything. They had to have known it that at some point before they went off the air that Friesen had actually gone over. So why was nobody in the booth here telling them, hey, we need to explain to people that we only have the aftermath, but she actually tumbled over and landed back on all fours and is now back in the race. That's part of a story. You're supposed to be, the broadcast is the art of visual storytelling, right? How can you be telling the full story if you don't even acknowledge that she flips? I mean, you don't have the footage. Okay, that's a problem. Obviously, we need to make sure that we take steps to make sure that doesn't happen again. But then you make it worse by just pretending it doesn't happen. I mean, I don't know if they were just too embarrassed to bring it up, but it's just unbelievable to me that nobody even brought it up on the broadcast after the fact. And all those people watching, I mean, I saw people, Haley Deegan just posted her race vlog, and I saw a couple people in the comments because she put Jessica's flip up in the thumbnail of the video, and there were people in the comments saying,
Jessica flipped?
Jessica flipped. Yeah, they still, 48 hours after the race, if you're not on Twitter, if you're not on social media, do you know that happened? And I think a lot of people don't. And that's bad.
It's really despicable that time and time again that Fox has been what's made our headline rather than the race itself. It's just mind-blowing. And it's come to the point where I'm no longer angry or frustrated at Fox. Like, I really want to go inside and see what exactly where the root of the problem is. Like, I'm not even mad anymore. I just want to figure out what the problem is because it's obviously something major.
Yeah. Well, I was talking with Brock last night and he mentioned the same thing. Like the blood pressure went up in Atlanta when they kept going back to the Shake and Bake girls. It wasn't even that at this point because unfortunately, and I even said this on Twitter as well, I'd say it's unbelievable, but it's not. This is what we've come to expect. But every time that I think this is a new low, this is an all-time low for Fox Sports and the NASCAR broadcast.
They'll find a way.
They find a way. You're absolutely right. I still think the worst individual moment was the Martinsville race a handful of years ago where the feed went out and we had like the muffed radio call of the last two laps. And then they cut to, I think was that the race that Todd Gilliland won, the fall Martinsville race. Anyway, they literally missed the last two laps in the last restart. But as in terms of the overall production, because we'll keep going here, it wasn't just, I mean, the missed flip was obviously the biggest issue.
No, there was more though.
Yeah, there was, and the other thing that's just so mind-boggling here, have you watched a Fox highlight reel or a Fox like promo for upcoming races? They love the crashes. They love the flips. They love the action. They love to market that. They think that that's what draws people in. And I think when you look at the thumbnails on YouTube and whichever ones have the most views, I hate to admit that people just watch NASCAR for the crashes. I'd like to think that the real fans, come for much more than that. But I think things get so sensationalized that that's actually what draws a lot of people in. You missed the flip entirely. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, I know I just said it's not unbelievable at this point, but at the same time, how do you miss that?
I don't know. I have no explanation for how they missed that. It completely blows my mind, and they're going to do it again somehow in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's the thing. I mean,
at Nashville this coming.
We're now at the point
Friday.
where, yeah, the NBC takes over the Cup and Xfinity schedules from here on out. So I'd be pleasantly surprised if the Truck Series booth is actually at another race this year. They're calling these races remotely, and I think that plays a big part of it as well. Because when you're at the track, when you're in the booth, you can spot things that the TV cameras aren't picking up on, and then the TV directors, they hear that, they cut to those cameras, and you're all good to go. Whereas obviously when you're broadcasting the race remotely, you only have the angles that we as the viewing audience have. So they probably didn't know that Jessica Friesen had gone over because they weren't at the track. I want to catch up here on the chat. I see we've got a couple messages before we move on here because there's more to talk about the broadcast. Adam saying, I think supercars in Australia has onboard cameras in each car for the broadcast. And yeah, I mean, that's the other thing too. It's 2022. We have the technology. We've had the technology for a very long time. I don't think it's an unreasonable expectation that if you can have onboard cameras easily installed on a quarter of the field or however many cars or trucks it is, at this point, just for, the sake of replay and trying to decide, I know NASCAR doesn't really do avoidable contact penalties and everything like that, but I think sometimes when you're trying to break down an incident, those things can be helpful on that front as well. And Kobe coming in here, in media, the first thing you learn is don't be the story. Well,
that's exactly right.
There's some people at Fox that didn't learn that or don't care enough to live by that philosophy.
But they have the experience to back it up.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to go back, though, to other issues that we had with the broadcast. I know we joke that NBC stands for nothing but commercials, but I mean, I think Fox really went up them once again. There were issues with the commercials because obviously, it's a dirt track, so we have to make sure the track is prepped and everything. And, I appreciate NASCAR's efforts in taking the time to do that. I know it was time consuming and kind of frustrating for the fans, but I do think that this race was a massive improvement over the demo derby that we saw last year.
For sure.
But I mean, Brandon, you can correct me if I'm wrong here. I know you just went back to watch some of the broadcast before the show tonight, but it seemed to me that for the vast majority of that red flag time in between the stages, I mean, you could say, it's not like watching paint dry, but it's like you're watching the track be surfaced. Wouldn't that be a good time to go to commercial, to get commercial breaks out of the way when you're under red, when there's no action going on? Apparently, Fox still had more commercials to run. So Todd Gilliland wins the race. And then Jamie Little cuts to commercial from the booth and says, you're not going to miss a thing. We'll go side by side, but we'll be back for the winner's interview. And they show commercials. And again, this is the other thing. They're showing commercials during the winner's burnout on Fox for NASCAR and other Fox programming. So again, NASCAR on Fox is showing commercials for NASCAR and Fox, as if those aren't the things that you're already watching.
It's almost like they're placed there because they didn't sell anything for those spots, and so they're just placing themselves to look busy, which is ridiculous because we're already watching, like you say, we're already watching NASCAR on Fox. Just show us the burnout. It's just mind-boggling, and also I think the reason these ad breaks are placed where they are is because they don't make a template for dirt. No, they've got a template that they use all season long. And so they don't take into account track prepping, and they just have their formula of when they want to place their ad breaks, and they've got that set just several months ahead of time.
There was a great tweet from Toby Christie or somebody, I think it was Toby himself actually, who took a screenshot of the last commercial break during Todd's burnout and said, well, at least the ad makes sense because they're showing the crowd in the stands here and they're encouraging you to come to the races. And apparently that's the only way you get to see any of the action and know what's going on because he had a truck flip tonight. We had we haven't even talked about this yet. Brett Moffitt got up on his side. I mean, that was the crash that took him out. And Jordan Teagues once again caught footage of that on the main straightaway. Fox didn't show that either. So there were two trucks that got up. One actually turned over. The other got up on his side. Fox showed none of that. They didn't have any angles. They didn't cut to any replays. There was no mention of it. And if all you did was watch the race, you still 48 hours later have no idea that any of that happened. It's ridiculous. I mean, I hate to be so negative and call the broadcast out, but you have to hold the people that are paying for your sport to be shown to the audience. You have to hold them to at least a standard of basic decency and competency. And that's not what we got Saturday night.
Yeah. And like I said, Fox has really lessened my interest in even watching the truck series. It's hard to do when you have to see it through Fox's lens. And more times than not, it's just not adequate. And we know there's better ways of doing it. And I do see one of the comments there from Kobe. Would you guys pay for commercial-free NASCAR coverage if it's offered in the new TV deal? Honestly, I don't know if I would pay for it just simply because already paying for too many other things that are take higher prominence. But yeah, I mean, if we can still watch it for free, no, I wouldn't do it. But I know a lot of people that would, and again, that's not going to help the broadcast with Fox if they don't change something at a core level. But that's certainly something that a lot of people would rather have.
Well, we've talked about this before as well. Formula One have sponsorship deals with Mother's Polish and CrowdStrike, who alternate, and it's their exclusive coverage for ESPN here in the States, but ESPN doesn't have to run ads. And I know the NASCAR races are longer. I'm not saying you can't go side by side like under caution and everything, but this is still the only sport that I can think of that has this much of a following where you take commercial breaks during the action. In baseball, you take commercial breaks between innings and during pitching changes. In football, basketball, hockey, you take them during timeouts or between quarters or periods or whatever the case may be. In soccer, you only take commercials during halftime. You run the full 45-minute halves uninterrupted because you have banners on the outside of a stadium that are constantly changing and constantly running ads there. That's how you get your advertisement time in. In NASCAR, there are commercials, sometimes full-screen commercials, during green flag action. And as fate would have it, I don't know, maybe the universe is trying to tell us something here and trying to tell the network something, but it seems like, I think Jamie McMurray even said during one of the recent Xfinity broadcasts, it's like Murphy's Law that you go to commercial and something happens and you have to go back and explain it because you missed it live. So, something has to change here. When we're talking about the broadcast here, Adam Lemery's coming back in saying what NASCAR should do is what F1 does for coverage on ESPN. Again, I know the races are longer, but I think that's certainly the model. You look at how Formula One's exploding here in the States. I think the commercial-free coverage plays no small role in the popularity of that. Good to see you, Joe. Joe Sammiego stopping by the chat. Like to see the trucks move exclusively out of Fox. This is another good point. I'm glad you brought that up, Joe. I think, I was very excited, on the IndyCar side of things when NBC took over the full schedule because I preferred their coverage to ABC. I love Lee Diffie in the booth. I love the coverage and the energy that he brings. And I think from a production standpoint, certainly towards the end, ESPN/ABC was just kind of phoning it in to keep the Indianapolis 500. But the other races, all credit to Alan Bestwick in the booth. He did a great job. But talking more again from a production standpoint, I think the coverage was lacking. And then NBC took over the full schedule. And we've seen, again, I don't think it's gone, Fox Truck Series levels of bad. But I think there has been a little bit of a decline here because now NBC knows that they are the sole broadcaster and the exclusive broadcaster of the series. So they don't have anybody to measure themselves against. They don't have any competition. And I think you're going to see the same thing if history is going to repeat itself here, particularly the second half of the truck schedule when they don't have any competition. They do the full schedule for the truck series. There's no competition there. There's no standard that they have to measure themselves against. And I think you see a dip in quality as a result.
Oh yeah, and it's definitely going to happen. It's going to take another player coming into the game, probably NBC or even CBS, mixing it up with SRX if they ever decided to come back to NASCAR, maybe start the truck series level or just ARCA. It would take something like that for Fox to realize, hey, we are really subpar here, and we have been for the past few years. And it really would take something like that Joe brought up.
One more thing I want to move on because there actually was a race and we should talk about the race and break down a little bit here. I don't want to monopolize the show with the coverage, even though it is the biggest talking point tonight. We brought it up briefly a little bit earlier. Marcus Lemonis, of course, the CEO of Camping World, who sponsor the Truck Series and also sponsor SRX, which was going head-to-head directly with the truck race. He appeared to like some tweets on his verified Twitter account that were openly critical of the broadcast. They were openly critical of the scheduling conflict between two series that he sponsors. Should NASCAR and Fox Sports in particular be on high alert that the guy that is literally funding the series, I mean, I'm only half joking when I say, who knows if the trucks would even still be around if it weren't for everything that Marcus Lemonis has poured into the truck series over the last decade and a half.
Oh, for sure.
Should they be on high alert that apparently he's not too happy with the coverage himself?
Yes. Yeah. Don't take that as a joke, man. I mean, they could either take it two ways. They could take that criticism and work with him, or they can outright reject it and take him off, like refuse his help, which would be a blatant shot in the foot for NASCAR. Yeah, definitely take what Marcus is giving you here, and maybe this is a good sign because it's somebody that maybe they'll actually listen to, the guy who's footing the bill.
I don't know. I know sometimes, Twitter likes isn't always the best way to judge somebody's opinions or intentions. And I don't like, in principle, the idea of scrolling through somebody's likes, to try to, find dirt on them or try to interpret what they truly feel or what they think. But at the same time, he liked multiple tweets that were criticizing multiple aspects and saying, well, I bet, Marcus probably isn't too happy or Camping World can't be too happy that this is how their series is being represented by Fox Sports. So I think, when you have the CEO publicly acknowledging that in one way or another, it's not a good thing. Let's leave it at that. We can try to dive into the deeper nuances of everything here. But it's certainly not good. Kobe brings up a good question here. Who could sponsor the truck series if Camping World pulls out? I guess you could give Craftsman a call, see if they're interested in a reunion, but I really don't know. You could give, I guess John Menard is the other big major motorsports sponsor, but he already sponsors the ARCA series and its East and West divisions. So I don't know that he would be willing to take another series on. I don't necessarily think it would be healthy for the sport if he takes another series on, because it shows that, again, one guy is kind of keeping the lower series and lower divisions alive by that. So I don't know that that would even be a good idea in principle. So I have no clue.
Maybe Hy-Vee, but they're more interested in IndyCar. But I mean, they're really doing a ton over there. That's the only thing I could think of that would come to mind.
Yeah, I don't know. It would. I think it would be a devastating blow for sure if Camping World pulled out. So, it's something to consider here. Once again, if Marcus isn't happy, and who's to say he wouldn't pull the plug if he comes across a deal that he doesn't like. If this is not the wake up call, then I don't know what is. Because we've talked about it time and time again on this show. We've talked about it on social media before. Something has to change. And I know we can joke around about the coverage and everything, but it's a serious discussion here. I know the truck series is the C tier series here, below Cup and below Xfinity, but that doesn't mean that you can just treat it, as such and not take it seriously and not at least put in minimal effort to cover all the major aspects of what's going on in a race. One more comment from Amber real quick. Have Marcus buy all commercials to make commercial-free trucks by Camping World.
Problem solved.
I don't know. Yeah, I guess. I mean, he's already doing so much. I don't know if he'd be interested in taking the coverage sponsorship as well.
I honestly think Fox is just blissfully ignorant that there is even a problem. I still think they don't even think there's a problem, and that's all I'm going to say.
I get what you're saying, but the timeline is so unanimous at this point, because I remember I even brought this up. I was a college freshman in 2017, and a journalist by the name of Tucker White would always call out Fox during the broadcast, and I'd be like, dude, you've tweeted 10 times about the truck race tonight, and 8 of them have been criticizing Fox for it. Can you just give them a break? It's not that easy to do. And I'm a stupid 18-year-old at the time who doesn't know what he doesn't know about broadcasting and journalism and everything. He saw this coming. I mean, I gotta give him credit. I owe him a massive apology, because it was getting bad in 2017. It's even worse now here 5 years later. Mm-hmm. And like I said, something has to change. And I gotta think, again, the timeline is so unanimous at this point that, surely somebody at Fox Sports. Mike Joy is active on Twitter, right? He interacts with fans from time to time. He has to know that a lot of them aren't satisfied with what's going on.
He's really good at deflecting haters, though. I think he might also be kind of blissfully ignorant, or just chooses to ignore it all.
Yeah, and to his credit, he's not the problem. Let's make that very, very clear.
Well,
I think a lot of this, a lot of this is people outside of the booth and people in the production area of things that's where we need to see the improvement. Because Mike Joy's been doing this for decades now. Obviously, he's a total pro, and he deserves credit for that because he does a fantastic job. Joe Samiego here. There we go. I cannot imagine NASCAR can be happy with the coverage. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know how anybody can have the full picture and know the full story, and then go watch that broadcast and say, yeah, that's give Fox Sports an Emmy, folks. That's fantastic coverage and really truly representative of everything going on in the sport right now. It's a massive problem, and it needs to be fixed sooner rather than later. One more thing here from Kobe. NASCAR isn't happy about the Ignition video game either, trying to get out of that deal. The game was hyped up because of graphics and everything, and that failed to deliver. Yeah, and you're right. They are trying to get out of that. 2025 is not that far away. So who knows if things get bad enough? I don't know. I got to think there's got to be some people in NASCAR that might be looking elsewhere for who's going to cover the series. But we've gone on long enough about that. It's hard to believe we're half an hour into the show here, and we've mentioned that Todd Gilliland won the race. Haven't really talked about the race. There was a race that happened, despite what the coverage may not have shown to you all. There was a race that was run, and Todd Gilliland was the winner. Let's transition here and let's talk about it. So Gilliland crossed the line first, the only Cup regular in the field. I know that's not going to please some people, but Gilliland is a Cup Series rookie, so maybe not as frustrating as when Kyle Busch does it to some people. I know that's the argument sometimes, that they only don't like it when Kyle Busch does it. It was like with cherry on top of the shake of awfulness for me last night that the only Cup regular in the field won the race. Nothing against Todd personally. He has the right to race in the series, but everybody watching this knows I'm not a fan of Cup drivers from the lower divisions. But regardless, Todd Gilliland picks up the win in his return to the Truck Series, driving for his father's team. It's the first time that he's done that. And Gilliland, of course, moved to the Cup Series this year, like I mentioned, with Front Row Motorsports. And his teammate Michael McDowell is having actually probably the best season of his career, at least the best season of his Front Row career, with a handful of top 10s this season. Gilliland, meanwhile, has the best finish of 15th at the Southern 500. So, Brandon, we'll bring you back in here. Even though it's technically a Cup driver stealing a win, Todd is still in his Cup rookie season. You can maybe say this was a good learning experience for him and a good confidence boost. Do you think this can be something that he can build on and take the momentum from on the Cup side of things?
Yeah. And first of all, I don't see Todd Gilliland completely as a Cup driver. I know he is by definition, but still being a rookie with Front Row, he's still, he wouldn't be considered a leech in my playbook. It may be different with Ben's, but we'll see. But yeah, as far as a confidence boost for the Cup Series, they're already done with the dirt tracks this year, and your success on dirt means nothing in the Cup Series now until next year at Bristol. So I don't know exactly what that's going to do for Todd, but a win is a win. So you've got that going on your shoulders. Maybe he can take some of that into the summer swing around the different tracks and get some better results with Front Row.
Yeah, and again, I'm with you. It's not. I understand why he's doing it, and I understand it's nothing against Todd. The drivers are allowed by rule, and I guess Todd would even be under the rule because obviously he has less than 3 or 5 years of Cup experience or whatever it is. But I'd never have anything against the drivers for doing it. It's the rule that lets them do it that bothers me. So, obviously Todd is running for Cup points. I would prefer that he had not been in the race and that a Truck Series regular or a dirt ringer coming into the Truck Series had been able to take that moment in the spotlight at Knoxville on Saturday night. But, it is what it is, and that's the rule. We have to live with it. I know every time that, I think we see young drivers come up through these series, and, I still remember Todd won an ARCA race the day after his 15th birthday, and it was like, oh my goodness, this guy's going to be a future superstar. And now he has a Cup opportunity, and it's with a midfield team. We have to keep our expectations reasonable here. I think if Todd can just end the season with 1 or 2 top 10s, I think that will absolutely be a confidence boost that he can take into next season and, be a successful year for him. Because again, it's not like he's driving, the 4th Gibbs car and is still with Toyota and, has all the pressure that guys like Daniel Suarez and Christopher Bell had to deal with here. I think he's getting Cup experience with a team where he doesn't really have very many expectations. I think that can be a good thing for him in the long run. And I also think that, again, I know it's a truck race on dirt, so there's probably not too much that he can take from the experience that he got on Saturday night and use it in his Cup car. But I think from a momentum standpoint and from a confidence standpoint, it might help reignite his confidence a little bit and maybe help squeeze a couple extra tenths per lap out of a Cup Series car going forward the rest of the season. So we'll see as we continue to cover that on Grid Live Wrap-Up, of course, because the Cup Series is part of the Grid ranking. And, maybe we'll be talking about Todd getting a top 10 at some point later this year. Now, one final thing before we move on to the ARCA race at Berlin. There's been a lot of debate recently about, does NASCAR belong on dirt? We're seeing the Cup Series even try it now at Bristol. I think a lot of people were dissatisfied with the Knoxville race last year and even more dissatisfied that the successful event that we had at Eldora we haven't seen since 2019. Knoxville appears to now be the dirt the actual dirt track that's going to be on the Truck Series schedule. Like I said, I thought last year's race was just nothing more than a demolition derby in many respects. So I do think that this was an improvement this year. But Brandon, in your mind, was it good enough to justify keeping Knoxville on the Truck Series schedule?
Yeah, it is an improvement over last year, Ben, but unfortunately it's still that not the excitement that we get at Eldora. And I know that the backdoor drama that was over Eldora with SRX taking Eldora and NASCAR having that having the beef with Tony Stewart and Tony. I forgot which way it went around, but some enough that Tony didn't want to let NASCAR have the sanction on the track for the Truck Series, and either that or NASCAR didn't want it. I forgot which way it went around, but yeah, Eldora made a much better place for those heavy trucks and a lot more grooves to ride around on. And Knoxville, it's better than last year's demo derby, but this year still had its problems of once after the second stage or so, once Todd Gilliland got ahead, there really was no stopping him. I mean, you saw the intervals. It was just a kind of a runoff with its sort of win, and not really what you would want to get out of your one dirt race of the year or second dirt race of the year.
Yeah, well, your one dirt race at a real dirt track.
True purpose-built dirt track, yes.
That's right. Kobe saying front row is home to Todd Gilliland, a more comfortable environment. His time at KBM seemed toxic. And yeah, I remember that year.
Also the drama there.
Yeah. Remember when Kyle said he and Harrison Burton, he gave him like a 2 out of 10, said they ain't doing, fill in the blank. And of course, everybody remembers the radio after Todd did get his win late in the year. And something that I don't need to repeat here on this show right now. Another good point from Kobe, though. Some of the drivers still said that they preferred going to Iowa Speedway over Knoxville. And I've got to admit, I did not realize until I saw a tweet after the race just how close Iowa is to Knoxville. Brandon, do you think that would be a better stop for the Truck Series if they wanted to go to that region in the country, to go back to Iowa rather than on the dirt at Knoxville?
Yeah, Knoxville to Newton, I think it is. Newton, Iowa, where Iowa Speedway is. Yeah. It would take the dirt derby off of the calendar. That would be a loss, but it'd be a great gain for Iowa Speedway, who just got their IndyCar doubleheader back, and it'd be a great thing for that facility. I wouldn't be a fan of losing the dirt derby. I think if we want to keep this tradition going, would really like to find a way to get it back to Eldora.
I think that's probably what you do in a perfect world. You probably take the Knoxville race and move it to Iowa, and then somehow find a way to revive the Eldora race again. I know that NASCAR and Tony Stewart had that beef with the SRX and the whole track deal, and I don't know that that bridge is reparable at this point. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. I mean, SRX is using Goodyear tires. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the deal that they have over there. And you think of all the words that Tony Stewart said about Goodyear over his entire career, and now he runs a series where they're using their tires there. So maybe there's a reparation that can be made that brings NASCAR back to Eldora. And I think that I'm with you on that. That is certainly a better track for the big heavy trucks there.
Yeah, for the good of Tony Stewart and NASCAR, it would be best if they made this reconciled and got this back underway.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, we should move on again. I know it's a bit of a lighter weekend, and we're still going to go into pushing a longer showtime here because we had so much to talk about at the start with the coverage. I guess there was a modified race this weekend. Congrats to Justin Bonsignor on winning that. I know we don't usually talk about the modifieds on this show. We usually talk about the ARCA series, though, and there was an ARCA race at Berlin Raceway, and it looked like Daniel Dye had it in the bag. He had it in control for much of the night, but Sammy Smith ended up stealing the win in the closing laps after Dye lost power with just under 10 laps remaining. So Smith takes the win. It's his first win in the big ARCA series. Of course, he has several wins in the ARCA Menards Series East. And Tom Hessert, the series veteran, great to see him back in the series. He took a strong second-place finish ahead of two-time defending West champion Jesse Love. I guess maybe you shouldn't call him defending because he isn't defending his title this year, but the most recent West Series champion who doubled down last year at Phoenix, he completed the podium in third place. Now, across all of his ARCA starts in ARCA's 3 divisions, Sammy Smith has a very impressive resume already. He only has one finish outside the top 5. It was an 18th place run at last year's combo race at Iowa. So, Brandon, when you look at Sammy Smith's resume here, How impressive has he been already, and what can we expect from him on the big tracks later this season now that he's finally 18?
Sammy Smith is a young, fresh talent, and he's also a hard-nosed racer. It's been nice to see him go through super late models with KBM and also in the ARCA like we've been talking about. He's going to be dangerous now that he's finally turning that 18 age and he can finally get with the big boy tracks. Just don't really have the history yet to say what we can predict how he's going to turn out there. But if it's anything like his dominance on the short tracks, he's going to be a force to be reckoned with for sure.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I thought that 18 car might lose a little bit of dominance because it was now under the KBM banner as opposed to the Cup affiliated Joe Gibbs team that it was for the last several years. But Sammy Smith seems to have not lost a beat. He's picked up right where he left off in the East Series, obviously winning a bunch of races there. It looks like he's on his way to a championship in that series. It's 2 combo races to finish out the year, though, so I guess that might throw a little bit of a wild card in there. But now to get a full big ARCA series win, I think that's a major confidence boost for him. And I think, you're absolutely right. We can expect to see some great things from him going forward. Kobe says Sammy Smith is going to run some Xfinity races later this year with Gibbs. And I got to tell you, I'm expecting some solid things from him over there as well. It worked out very well for Ty Gibbs because Ty went out in his Xfinity debut and, just kind of won the race of the Daytona road course, which was a crazy night on social media and everybody reacting to that. But, I think Sammy Smith has certainly shown that he's a similar talent, with what he's done in the ARCA series so far. And I think we can expect great things from him going forward.
Yeah, I definitely think so. It's going to be interesting seeing him going through the KBM ladder. And it seems to obviously be the ladder of choice, especially in the truck series and going into the Xfinity series as well.
Yeah, so I'm sure we can expect some great runs out of Sammy Smith later this year. Of course, he turned 18 on June 4th, so he is now finally eligible to run at every track on the ARCA schedule. And, I've got a feeling that he could be a championship contender this year had he had his 18th birthday been just a few months earlier and he hadn't missed the first couple of races of the year. Well, Brandon, I know it was unfortunately, not a pleasant conversation to have the first half hour of the show, but there were still some great moments that came out of this weekend. So what is your one shining moment from the weekend that we just had here?
Well, you set me up because my one shining moment is about what we spent 30 minutes talking about. Unfortunately, well, it is a shining moment. My shining moment, friends, is that we are getting to the NBC side of the season. Thank goodness it's over. We don't have to see them till February in Cup and Xfinity, and we can somewhat enjoy the Cup Series and Xfinity Series a little bit more as far as a visual standpoint, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I guess that's kind of the theme for the night. Even the one shining moment, it's kind of a bit of a downer in some aspects. But I guess maybe we should look at it more positively and hope that NBC can deliver this year and give us some solid broadcasts on the Cup and Xfinity side of things. I want to give a call to Brad Smith. I know he didn't finish the race on Saturday night in Berlin, but it was only his second career top 10 finish in approaching, I think it's 392 or 393 starts in the ARCA series. And listen, I know the car counts are not what they used to be. I know, he probably would have finished 11th if it hadn't been for the accident that Amber Balkan was in. But it's still nice to see somebody that's been there for that long, who's out there, just doing everything he can to stay alive in an era where it's so difficult to get to the track. The race purses are not, where they need to be able to sustain these teams. His team is, consisting almost entirely of volunteers who just love to be at the track. And it's nice to, put another marker in the top 10 column for him in what's been a long career in the ARCA series as one of the last true independents still running that team that James Hilton owned for so many years. So that's my one shining moment. I know it probably would have been a little bit nicer if Brad had been running at the finish to finish that top 10 off on the track, just to see was at Winchester a couple of years ago. But it is still nice to see. It's good to see him have a solid run, and given the limitations of his small family run team. And, the way the car counts have gone, maybe it's not the last time we'll see Brad in the top 10 later this year. Adam coming in as well, another shining moment. Tom Hesser III getting a second place finish after not racing for a few years. That is incredible. Yeah, it looked like he might have had a shot to win the race had he been able to keep Sammy Smith behind him. I don't think anybody had anything for Daniel Dye there. It's unfortunate what happened to him. But absolutely a great run for Tom Hesser as well. And that is going to wrap it up for us here on Grid Live Encore tonight. And thank you all for watching. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow us on all of our social media platforms, including Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. If you really like what you saw, you can take 5 minutes after the show to invest in our Patreon. And as always, a thank you to Colin, Deshelle, Mark, and Robin, who have already done so. If you'd rather make a one-time donation, you can buy me a coffee. There's a link to do that in the video description as well. You can buy a coffee for your favorite honor or talent. Any amount will help us continue to grow this motorsports media outlet. And as always, thank you to Edward, Amber, and Zachary, who have already done so. Finally, visit our sponsor, public.com, the stock market social media home. The referral code on your screen there, GRIDnet, and in the description will give you $5 to invest. Public.com allows you to connect with your friends, make new friends, and use tools to learn how to invest in the stock market. Now, on Wednesday, Kobe Lambeth and Adam Lemeries will be back to host another episode of Grid Tonight. Joe Samniego and Daniel Zeri will have the Women in Motorsports program on Thursday. And, of course, stay tuned for more Grid Live coverage all throughout the weekend. Brandon, any final thoughts before we sign off for tonight?
Well, this weekend is Nashville Super Speedway weekend in Lebanon, Tennessee. And although SMI did take away my favorite logo from the first year, I much prefer the black and white than the old boring red, white. I mean, it's red, white, and blue. It's great, but they just put it everywhere, and so it makes it less special. But the logo has changed for the second year, but that won't change the track action. And looking forward to something that was gone for 10 years and never even had a Cup date since 2001, and it's building. It's still special to have the Cup Series back in Nashville. So looking forward to it.
You and me both with what happened to Dover's logo, the Speedway Motorsports takeover and everything. Yeah, it's unfortunate we don't have those independent logos anymore, and it's just the plain SMI logo. I'm still trying to get used to calling it Dover Motor Speedway. That's throwing me for a loop, but it's
Dover Downs.
yeah, that's true. Dover Downs. You want to throw it back even further. It's like Brock Beard still calling it Sears Point after the Infineon and Sonoma Raceway name changes. Well, Brandon, I know you're not going to the track this weekend, but enjoy having NASCAR back in your backyard. For Brandon Crossland, I'm Ben Schneider. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you next week.
Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform, public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities, such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest. Start investing and networking on public.com.